Hey! Hey guys, Christmas is just around the corner. With 2022 looming, I thought, why not? Let's do a last build. We call it a Christmas 2021 build. The end of the year with a great bang. What I planned this time around is going to be a white Christmas PC build with a red, green, and blue PSU cable extensions. It's a play on those balls you see on Christmas trees. If you watch to the end, I promise to give you a pleasant, well, kind of weird but familiar looking surprise. Budget-wise, the total parts cost about 1.2k, consisting of course of new and used parts. This build is definitely not the best price to performance because some of the parts are chosen purely for aesthetic purposes, but of course they serve their purpose in terms of performance but just cost slightly more. Some of the parts I already have on hand, and the deals I got, you'll be lucky to find them, but if not, you'll likely pay a bit of a premium. If you like to follow this build guide, I would strongly recommend that go for more sensible options, especially if you're on a budget. Well, without further ado, let's go through the individual components. We're going to be using the old but golden Ryzen 5 3600, and this is water cooled for AIO. For ID cooling, it's the Zoomflow 240X Snow Edition. For case fans, we're going to be using ID cooling XF12025 ARGB Snow 5V ARGB fans. That's really a mouthful, 3 of them. For the motherboard, we're going to be using an MSI B450 Gaming Pro Carbon AC. For RAM, we're going to be using Klevv RAS 16 gigs of RAM running dual channel. They're RGB RAM running at 3600 MHz at CL18. For the graphic card, we're going to be using Zotac GeForce RTX 2070 Super M. Might be a bit surprised here, but I'm going to be using an EVGA 550W 80+ gold power supply. It's the 550 GD. I would recommend a 650W power supply for such a build, but being a gold power supply, I'm not worried at all because this is a really decent power supply. Because the 2070 Super plus the 3600 wouldn't consume more than 550, so I totally trust this power supply. For the cable extensions, as I mentioned, and we're going to be using this red, blue, green cable extensions. I got this from Taobao Marketplace. I know this guy that you can customize whatever you want, and it's basically at least half to a quarter price of cable mod, and it worked perfectly fine. For SSD, we're going to use an M.2 NVMe SSD. This is Gen 3. It's the HP EX900 M.2 NVMe. For the chassis, like I said, I chose this purely for the aesthetics. It has a front glass panel and a side glass panel as well, but it has plenty of airflow around. It's slightly better than H510. It's the Great Wall Soul Mirror M22 high airflow chassis. Well, at least higher than the H510. Enough of the talk. Without further ado, let's proceed towards the build montage. surely isn't Christmas without some lighting. I added some fairy lights. First I tried to attach it via 3M hooks, but those hooks just keep on dropping out. So I switched them out. I go rogue, I go cowboy. I just take it up with some scotch tape. So long it stays up and looks good. Red, green, blue theme with white and lights added to it. I make it more Christmassy. So these fairy lights, they're hooked up to the Molex cables of the power supply unit. It's using this funky looking like Molex to USB female adapter, and this fairy lights connected via USB to that female USB adapter. Of course, we're gonna go with some gaming benchmarks. We already tested CPU and GPU independently, and the temps are just fine. We use Cinebench R33 and Yunjin Supervision at 4K optimized as our test instruments. For gaming, for sure 1440p and 1080p give you the high refresh rates all the gamers are gunning for, and that's definitely where our money's at. The first game we're gonna play, it's an old title, but old is gold and it's still really relevant today for a lot of players. It's Fortnite. By doing this at 1440p at high presets, epic view distance of course. For this title, we got an average FPS of 131 and a 1% lows of 84 FPS. Now you could go 1080p, but I think 1440p gives you much better visual quality. After the next game, Shadow of Tomb Raider, just because it has the nice demo. We run this in 4K at high presets with DLSS on. Average FPS, we're getting 70, and for the 95% numbers, we get 65 FPS. And in this case, we're GPU bound. Cyberpunk 2077, this is still a hefty game to play, even if you have the latest and greatest, except maybe the 3090 and the 12900K. But that's way overkill and overpriced. Anyhow, for this title, we're going with 4K high presets with DLSS in auto mode. Now, we start things off with 4K high presets with DLSS in auto mode. We're getting average FPS of 72 and a 1% lows of 49. That's a respectable figures for such a high visual fidelity title. So I thought, why not, let's push it further. We're still at 4K resolution and we are on the ray tracing medium presets. Well, I tried ray tracing ultra, but that was really unplayable under 20 FPS. And I also tweaked the DLSS to run at performance mode, as we really need all the help we can get here. In this test, we get an average FPS of 44 FPS and a 1% lows of 17. It's still really hard to run for ray tracing, as you can see right here. Right, so the last title we have here is CRAS or ICARAS. This is one of the latest survival games that some people say is ripped off of Valheim, to make it more inspired, if you will. This game caught my eye because it shows up in the NVIDIA website. It says that it boasts NVIDIA RTX global illumination and DLSS, so it's definitely going to be eye candy. We start things off running at 4K. We turn on DirectX 12 in high presets and epic view distance with DLSS in performance mode, RTX on and global illumination on. Basically, we turn on all the eye candy. Once we get it up and running, average FPS we got was 45 FPS and 1% lows, 9 FPS. This is just not very smooth. I can experience like frame drops periodically as and when. So turning off ray tracing, we still run at 4K. We switch back to DirectX 11 on a high preset and epic view distance. For DLSS, we have performance mode, RTX off and global illumination off as well. Once we get these settings dialed in, we're getting average FPS 55 and a 1% lows of 7. Something's really wrong with the lows in my books. We probably need to drop to 1440p to see what happens. Now at 1440p, we're still at DirectX 11, high presets, epic view distance, and all other settings the same. We're getting average FPS of 86 and a 1% lows of 24. It's still a bit low in my books, but the frame drop to 24 is not so noticeable to a single digit frame as per the previous test, while the game still looks decent at 2K. I guess this game is either really demanding or just not so optimized, because this is run by indie studio called Rocketworks. I haven't heard of them. they probably don't have as much resources to spend time to optimize their games. To round things up, performance on that 2070 Super is still respectable, even with the rise of the 30 series cards. The Ryzen 5 3600 still holds up in the way of the Ryzen 5000 series and the Intel 12th Gen's latest and greatest, making for excellent option in 1080p and 1440p gaming. 4K is also an option for most titles. Using that 2070 Super, if you target at 60 FPS, you shouldn't veer too far off that. With some slight tweaking to the settings and with DLSS and reflex, it's totally doable. The key to the matter is prices. Based on today's prices for GPU, total build cost for you is more like 1.9k, just because I snagged 2070 Super for a sweet $500 back then last year, late last year in fact. Unless you manage to snag a great deal just like I did here, you're probably better off getting a newer and slightly faster 3060 Ti. Anyhow, I wish you guys enjoyed this video and wishing you guys a Merry Christmas. Ho ho ho! Merry Christmas!